from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And good morning on this Holy Thursday morning. Welcome to everybody who's listening. I usually say we're coming to you from the Mercy One studios in West Des Moines, but right now Gina and I are both at our homes, and only Jimmy Olson and Deacon Tony Valdez are risking life and limb, I guess, to go into the office to keep the studio going. So we hope that that the technology that we're using can get everything accomplished today as it's supposed to, but forgive us a little bit if we have some problems because everybody is kind of remote today. So Gina is with us too. Gina, how are you?
Good morning. I love the wizardry of technology. That we feel like we're in the same room, but we are miles apart.
We're miles apart, and we have Skype, but unfortunately we don't have everybody on the picture phone with Skype, and at least Gina and I could see what we were doing and could let each other know, who was next up to talk and whatever. So we're kind of doing this blind a little bit, but that's the nature of things today, I guess. But This is Good Thursday morning, and we ought to remember that we're just starting the Triduum today, and this is, of course, the most sacred time in the church year, and unfortunately, this year we're going to miss a lot of the beautiful liturgy that is available this year. I've always thought, Gina, that the time from the Holy Thursday Mass to the Easter Vigil were the most beautiful liturgies in the whole liturgical year.
Yeah, I always consider those an opportunity to jumpstart my year. It's my new year, I've gone through Lent and I've become closer, and it's just a great reset time in my faith life.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately now, with everything closed down the way it is, we're not getting out to those liturgies, although we can see them on TV and we can see them online, but it's not quite the same as being there and taking part in what's going on. So I like to remind people that if you're missing being there, there are places like St. Augustine that has a chapel, adoration, 24-hour adoration chapel, that is open all the time, and you can still go there and pray, stop in and say a couple of prayers or a rosary or whatever it is, make a holy hour. And I think that's important this time, especially with everything else shut down the way it is.
I stopped in this week, and I was the only person in there for about an hour and a half. So it was, I'm telling you, social distancing is very easy at the chapel.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is. Luann and I were there the other night, and I think there may be 6 people in there, all sitting all over, so that social distancing was maintained.
Not an issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let's open with a prayer. Gina, do you have a prayer for us to open?
For this Maundy Thursday, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God of peace, bring your peace into our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn your way of love to those hearts and minds that are consumed with hatred. Strengthen us in hope and give us the wisdom and courage to tirelessly work for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. We got an interesting program for you today, assuming we get all our electronics taken care of and everybody gets on the line. First of all, we're going to have Dr. Ann Hendershot from Franciscan University, and she's going to be talking about this idea that's taking hold around the country, allowing boys to play in women's athletics. And that's going to be an interesting discussion. And then we're going to talk with Attorney Charles LiMandri from the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, who's going to talk about the possibility, or at least the legality and the ethics, of rationing health care during the pandemic. So we'll take a break. Go ahead, Gina.
Very timely issue, I think, for our listeners. Yes.
Yeah, they are. So we're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we're going to have Dr. Hendershot with us. So this is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Thank you for listening, and we will be back in about 3 minutes.
Impoverished children break everyone's heart, but poverty seems like such a big problem. What can one person do to make a difference? For 17 years, Blessman International's passion has been to connect the resources of our donors with sustainable programs that impact the lives of impoverished children in South Africa. Our donors are feeding thousands of hungry children every week, providing basic water and sanitation for impoverished communities, and sharing the love of God in practical ways every day. Go to www.blessmaninternational.org and make your donation today. Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
Nearly 64% of all abortions in Iowa are chemical, or more commonly known, the abortion pill. At Intervisions Healthcare, we do not provide the abortion pill, but we do provide the medical information required to make an informed decision. If a woman regrets taking the first pill, she can come to Intervisions to help reverse the effects. Our nursing staff is trained in the abortion pill reversal protocol, a relatively new medical procedure, but we need your help in getting the word out. For more information on the free medical services at Intervisions Healthcare or to support the mission, visit ivhcare.org.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports 365 is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic with 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling Catholic graduate, and Dr. Todd Pedig. The Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, online at ashworthvision.com.
We're back. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we're joined now by Dr. Ann Hendershot from Franciscan University. She's a sociologist there, and she's written an interesting article on what's going on with boys in girls sports. Doctor, are you there?
I am. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Well, we're happy to have you. Gina No, my co-host, is joining us too. We are in different locations because of the virus here. So Gina and I are each from our respective homes, and we have a couple of people in the studio who are taking care of the board there. So we hope that our electronics keep working the way they're supposed to, and we can do this. But pardon us if we get a little flummoxed here once in a while.
Sure, I think it's amazing.
Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Gina. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
All right, let's talk about what's going on here. This is a thing that's, I guess, been taking the country in the last year or so. Boys, high school boys, biological males, saying that they want to play high school athletics as a girl on the girls' team because they identify as girls. What's wrong with that,
yeah, absolutely.
Doctor?
Well, I think there's a lot wrong with that, the unfairness of it, but I'm sure a lot of your listeners are a little concerned about this because this is a nationwide thing. It's not just Iowa. although Iowa is in the middle of this. Iowa allows transgender students, male athletes or female athletes, to play on whatever team they identify with. So if a biological boy, identifies in Iowa as a female, he can play. Or she can play now because she says she's a girl. I wrote this because I'm in Connecticut. I live in Connecticut when I'm not teaching at Franciscan, and 3 female high school track competitors, girls, young women, filed a Title IX discrimination complaint seeking to block biological males from participating in girls' sports. They say it violates their Title IX rights, and I agree with them. I think it absolutely is unfair.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, the problem is it's really hurt girls' sports. Now, the transgender advocates, and I understand them because I'm sure these young men who are now claiming to be women, who believe they're women, they absolutely believe that they're female, they're hurting, they're in pain also. But I don't know that this is helping them. 19 states in the country, including Iowa, allow this. There are several who don't allow this, like Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho. Indiana doesn't allow it. Kentucky, Louisiana, Nebraska, and Texas. They all bar biological males from competing on female teams by requiring the student sex at birth, determining which team they're allowed to play on. The bottom line for me is the unfairness of it, and I'm just asking, where are the feminists today? This is taking all of the awards, all of the trophies, and more importantly, all of the scholarships away from biological females, the ones that feminists claim to support, and giving it to these males. Now, in Connecticut, these 2 male athletes, biological male athletes, presenting as female, they now dominate all of women's track and field. They've won 15 women's track championships in the past 2 years. These are titles that were formerly held by girls, 9 different girls.
As I recall...
Yes. Oh, I think I lost you. I'm not able to hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because technology is blinking me in and out a little bit here. But as I recall, in one of these cases, the boys who are involved in these sports not only hold all the records, but the argument is that they have, since they claim to be girls, they have the right to be accommodated. Now, my question is, if these boys think they're girls, why don't they have the right to have some therapy that maybe will help them through whatever it is that they're having problems with?
Right. As Catholics, that's the first thing we would say. We want to help them. We don't want to discriminate against them. We don't want to cast them away. We want to help them. But to say that is dangerous in this political climate. There are many states that don't allow.
In some states, if they're minors, that conversion therapy that's used by some therapists is banned if you're a minor.
Exactly. Right. And the advocates for the transgender community would say we're injuring their self-esteem by you and I even having this conversation, that these are women. They identify as women. They talk about themselves as girls, even though one of them has a mustache. He talks about, the biological male talks about himself, refers to himself as a woman, as a Connecticut woman. And the 2 boys have taken away from girls in Connecticut over 50 chances, 50, to advance to next level races. And they now hold 13 individual meet records. And I know people say, oh, what's the big deal? It's just high school athletes. No, it's a huge deal because girls are not going to go to college because of this. They're not able to get scholarships because they don't qualify to be seen at the higher levels. The boys are taking their places, as you advance.
Yeah.
It is a big deal.
Will the university levels give the women's scholarships to these young men identifying as women, or is it just denying the women from being the top of the class to be able to qualify for the women's scholarships at the universities?
I would think there could be lawsuits if the universities did not give women's scholarships to biological males. The universities are as politically correct, or even more so, than the high schools are. So I think they will. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
So it will bleed right over into the university systems.
Right. Uh-huh.
Now, as I recall, in one of these instances, the one of the male athletes, we have to understand here that where biological males are generally bigger, faster, stronger than biological girls. And so naturally they have a competitive advantage then. But there was one case, I believe, and I think it might have been involved in this Connecticut case, where one of the biological male girls actually tried out for and did not make the men's team, the boys' team.
Right, that is true. That did happen. And that's why in Iowa, you have to be consistent. Connecticut allows them to go back and forth. In Iowa, they have to play. It says right in your bylaws for male athletes, as long as they consistently identify as a male at school, home, and socially, not just for sport. Like you couldn't just be a male at home and a female to be on the team, which is, I guess, more consistent because they're not getting the surgery necessarily, so that they still have all the testosterone and all of the male advantages that males have, the strength, the bone mass, everything. So that's what's kind of bothering people. But if your listeners want to go to transathlete.com, that's where it gives a state-by-state breakdown in which states permit transgender children and youth to participate fully, which have some what transgender advocates would call discriminatory policies. Now, Iowa, they're happy.
What was that website again?
It's called Transathlete, TRANSathlete.com. Yeah, and you'll see a state-by-state breakdown. Connecticut is one of the more permissive ones, but there's 19 of them. So that's a lot of states. Some will require that they've been off, they've had to take hormone suppression drugs like testosterone suppression in order to compete. But even suppressing testosterone does not eradicate the male advantage in terms of bone mass and strength. It really doesn't.
Right. Now, in these states, how many of them require parental permission for a biological male to claim female status?
No, none of them. That parental permission doesn't really mean much in high schools anymore. I mean, as you know that, you've talked about this on air, getting an abortion doesn't need parental permission in public high schools in many states.
Yeah, and we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago discussing a Wisconsin situation where the school children were allowed to choose their gender they wanted to be during school hours.
I know. That's frightening to me. As a grandmother, I have a little 8-year-old grandson. I worry about that because, that's wide-ranging. The school is a big part of the day, and everybody at school thinks of you as a girl if you're a boy, and then you go home and you pretend to be a boy for a little while, and then you go back. I worry more about the Equality Act. I don't know if you've talked about it with your listeners, but the Equality Act is kind of a new ERA.
That was passed by the House of Representatives last year.
I know. Yeah, it's frightening. I think it's very frightening because the Equality Act would invalidate all of those states, like I mentioned, Alabama, Georgia, all those states that don't allow this. It would invalidate their laws. It would invalidate any attempt to limit biological males from competing against females. And so I imagine your representatives voted in favor of it. President Trump said he opposes the Equality Act, but I think the LGBTQ advocates will never give up their quest to destroy the equality women have worked for. And I don't understand where the feminists are, except I think there's money involved from the LBT. I just think there's money because why?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't understand where the feminists are either. I have some information here that I think might put some light on this. conversation. There are standards in female athletics that are not the same as in boys' athletics. For example, in women's volleyball, the height of the net is 7 inches lower than that used for men's. The standard weight used in a high school shot put is 4 kilograms for girls and 5.44, or 36% heavier for boys.
I didn't realize
the hurdle
that.
height used in high school girls in a 100-meter hurdle is 33 inches. The boys is 39 inches. And the standard women's basketball has a circumference of 28.5 to 29 inches at a weight of 20 ounces, where the standard circumference for the boys is 29.5 to 30 inches and a weight of 22 ounces. So the rules and the way women's athletics are set up take into account the fact that men are taller, faster, stronger than women, and the standards reflect that. Now you have a situation where boys are coming in claiming to be women, and they're playing in these women's sports, and like it says, there's 7 inches higher for men's volleyball nets, etc. So it gives them an even more unfair advantage.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. So that enables even a mediocre boy player to be a star against girls.
Exactly.
That's awful. That's even more unfair. Yes.
I especially admired your analysis of this policy change as an outgrowth of the ERA movements of the 70s, and how it was actually projected and by Phyllis Schlafly that this would actually occur. Right. She projected this.
She did. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. I am a fan of Phyllis Schlafly, but that's embarrassing to say because she has become like a joke in society, which is really unfortunate. She was a very devout Catholic, mother of many children. I can't remember how many, but I think it was 8. A lawyer, brilliant, wrote books, and she almost single-handedly mobilized forces to block the passage of the ERA back in the 70s and 80s. And at the time, she knew that full equality meant combat positions, no divisions between men and women's sports. She knew that once radical feminists took over with their demands for abortion rights, affirmative action, and full equality, there was no turning back, because all the things that brought, we're paying for that today. I mean, this no-fault divorce, where women end up much worse than men financially after divorce. All of this she predicted. She predicted these unisex bathrooms, and everybody laughed at her. What a joke she was with that funny hair and hairspray and everything. She became like a joke, and she's a joke today, sadly. But I admire her so much. But people have made fun of me because I am a Phyllis Schlafly fan. And I have a friend who wrote a book with her, George Neumeier, and he said what a lovely woman she was. She died a few years ago. Right. A lovely, good Catholic woman.
Yeah, she was certainly kind of a prophet. You know, there's this social creep going on everywhere. I read something just the other day where after same-sex marriage, Utah is now decriminalizing polygamy.
Polygamy, yeah, and thruples. I just wrote an article about thruples. You know, couples, 2 females, 1 male. Was on House Hunters. I don't know if you did a show on that, but you should. There's a growing movement to accept. Well, polyamory, which is a marriage or a relationship between 3. Polyamory is many, of course, but House Hunters, I don't know if you watch HGTV, but they had an episode, just like Phyllis Schlafly would have predicted, of 2 females married to 1 male. They got married in a ceremony in the Dominican, but they're searching for a house, just like they're a normal couple on House Hunters.
Yeah, I don't watch that, but my wife does, and she told me about it.
Maybe she saw that one. Yes, that's all part of it. So you're right about Utah and the polygamy, but polyandry is already normalized. I mean, once it's on HGTV, it's pretty normal, and people thought it was really normal, except for people like me and you, faithful Catholics.
Yeah, I think we're becoming dinosaurs here. Doctor, thank you for joining us today. We're out of time, but we appreciate your comments and joining us. And we'll have you back when we get on marriage and all that, too.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, thank you very much. Dr. Ann Hendershot from St. Franciscan University. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we will be back in just a couple minutes.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
Nearly 64% of all abortions in Iowa are chemical, or more commonly known, the abortion pill. At Intervisions Healthcare, we do not provide the abortion pill, but we do provide the medical information required to make an informed decision. If a woman regrets taking the first pill, she can come to Intervisions to help reverse the effects. Our nursing staff is trained in the abortion pill reversal protocol, a relatively new medical procedure, but we need your help in getting the word out. For more information on the free medical services at Intervisions Healthcare or to support the mission, visit ivhcare.org.
What is the best gift ever? Well, some might say a Catholic education, and I agree. But if you think you can't afford Catholic education, think again. Apply for CTO, and you could receive up to half your tuition for kindergarten through 12th grade. More information is online, ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports 365 is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic with 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling Catholic graduate, and Dr. Todd Pedig. The Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, online at ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Here's your forecast on Iowa Catholic Radio. Strong high pressure moving into our area. That'll be giving us very windy conditions through the afternoon with gusts as high as 45 miles an hour, partly cloudy and about 50. Overnight, clear, breezy, and upper 20s, and then we get a sunny day tomorrow with our high in the mid-50s. Weather is brought to you by Divine Treasures, a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton on Iowa Catholic Radio.
All right, we are back. There's an issue with the coronavirus and everything else that's going on medically these days about whether rationing health care is an appropriate action or not. Charles LiMandri is from the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund. He is an attorney, well-known attorney in the area of religious civil rights, and he's joining us today. Good morning, Charles. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning, Mike. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, certainly. And my co-host, Gina, is joining us. You have to understand we're all in different locations here, so it may be a little bit confusing, but we're all here, and we'd like to talk to you about a memo that you've written for, I guess it was for the Thomas More Society, about rationing of health care during the coronavirus.
Correct. And we sent it to the Office of Discrimination of the Department of Health and Human Services, and we know that they've read it and commented on it as well. So it was ultimately for the decision makers who are going to have to grapple with these tough issues.
What is going on right now? Because I know there are some places, the New York Times has reported that people in New York are starting to look at how they're going to ration health care if that becomes a necessity. I know there was a big thing in Washington State about the same thing. First of all, before we talk about the ethics and the legality of it, what are they currently talking about when they talk about rationing health care?
Well, we were asked to get involved in this issue by three prominent Catholic scholars, including Professor Robbie George and Professor Charles Camisey, and then most recently Professor Ryan Anderson, because we had healthcare administrators making statements like the following. I'm quoting, and this is the head of the Washington State Hospital Association. She said, if you're above a certain age and we have a shortage of ventilators, you don't get one. So they were actually talking about doing what has happened in places like Italy and Spain, where if you're over like 60 years old, you're just going to be left to die if you need a ventilator. And of course, in the more advanced stages of the coronavirus, since it attacks the respiratory system, that's what's most in need for these patients, is that they get ventilator assistance for their breathing. So there was a real concern in places like Washington and now New York that they're going to have a shortage of ventilators, and that people basically are going to be discriminated against if they're over a certain age or if they have a disability. And the concern is, at least here in the United States, there's federal laws that prohibit discrimination on the basis of age and disability, like the Age Discrimination Act, and there's a Federal Rehabilitation Act. There is a statute called Americans with Disabilities Act. All of these say if you're getting any type of federal funding, and pretty much all of these hospitals are, then you can't discriminate. If you've got someone who is, an otherwise maybe healthy 65-year-old person, you can't say you don't get a ventilator no matter how sick you are, no matter how much it might otherwise help you. And the same thing with the disabled person. And I think one of the primary issues here is we don't want to have the line healthcare providers basically making these life and death decisions based on arbitrary discriminatory determinations, such as quality of what they perceive as quality of life, for example, for an elderly or a disabled person, or even longevity issues. The issue should be, in each case, dealing with catastrophe like the coronavirus or any healthcare situation. Of course, it's more critical now because of shortages, but any healthcare situation, we evaluate each patient individually based upon their needs and based upon clinical factors regarding how well they're expected to respond to the treatment. And then you provide, whatever available resources you have in order to address that particular patient's needs. And, for each patient, they may or may not have comorbid factors. And if someone does, and you take that into consideration, is age irrelevant? No, because the older you get, oftentimes, the more other health issues you have. So age is not irrelevant. But what we're saying is you can't categorically restrict someone or prohibit them from getting treatment simply because of some arbitrary numerical cutoff, like, you're 60, you're 65, so you don't get the treatment. Fortunately, I don't think that's happening too much yet. Go ahead.
Or you have Down syndrome or something like that.
I know correct.
There would be people that would worry about not only their grandparents, but if you have a Down syndrome child or somebody in that situation, that would certainly be a worry to me anyway.
Absolutely. And, people carry this discriminatory, bias, into the workplace regardless of who they are, and that's going to include healthcare providers. And now in the age, recent years of having all of these physician-assisted suicide statutes passed, there's been, a lessening of the significance of the value of every human life, regardless of age, regardless of disability, because we've adopted this euthanasia-type mentality, at least among many people, which was, kind of what drove eugenics and the Nazis is, is it a life worth living? Who gets to make that determination? We as Catholic Christians, every life is a gift from God. Every life is worth living. But once you start down that slope, whose life is more valuable? Does the politician then get the ventilator instead of the truck driver? And one of the issues is, do first responders get the ventilators? Since if they get a quick recovery, they can hopefully be out there saving more lives. I mean, that's a legitimate question, but those are tough. Those are tough issues.
Now, what happens if a system, say this one in Seattle that you talked about, if they decide that they're going to issue an arbitrary cutoff of age? Let's say if you're over 70, you don't get the ventilator. Just period. Doesn't matter what the comorbidity is.
The Department of Health and Human Services, after they got our memo, and I'm sure they're already working on theirs, but they said they did read and consider ours, which was kind of nice. They issued their own set of guidelines on March 28th, and basically, reminded all of these hospital administrators, people in decision-making authority on these issues, what the federal law is and what the potential repercussions are in terms of administrative action that can be taken in the first instance by the Department of Health and Human Services to cut off their funding and even to impose fines. And there's even the possibility of civil lawsuits in some cases. There might be some immunities for people in emergency situations making these decisions, but nonetheless, the law does provide, in certain cases, for them to be sued if, in fact, they discriminate against someone in violation of federal law and that person is injured in the process. So there's a panoply of potential consequences that these healthcare professionals have been reminded of. And, in the worst-case scenario, people could actually lose their licenses, I suppose, although that would be extreme. But these are all issues that have been brought to the attention of the people in decision-making authority, and I think they're taking it seriously. For example, in New York, they came out with some very, very comprehensive protocols, and they had people who were bioethicists weigh in, and even religious leaders on panels when they developed those. I think it was after the last major virus situation. So they already had a model, which is pretty good, and it makes it clear you can't discriminate on the basis of issues like age and disability. So we weren't starting from scratch on these issues, as apparently they may have been in places like Italy and Spain, where you showed videos of doctors crying, saying they had elderly patients left to die, painful deaths actually, because they didn't have the resources. We haven't reached that point here, and the whole point of this conversation and the steps we have taken is to see that we don't reach that point. But I think the healthcare community has now been made aware that they've got administrative and they've got other legal consequences if they violate the law. At the very least, they'll lose their federal funding, which is no small deal since they depend on it to operate.
I noticed that the Catholic Medical Association issued on March 27th some guiding principles for medical professionals that I think was very timely and a reassurance to those professionals. And it really emphasizes the dignity of the human life and kind of a guiding mechanism for our professionals.
Yes, absolutely. And they play a very valuable role, making sure that we look at this through the lens of our faith and rights of conscience, which guide us in a way that's always been fully consistent with the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm, which is been violated not just in spirit, but the letter of it with the abortion providers and now physician-assisted suicide. So the Catholic Medical Association and the Christian Medical and Dental Association have played an important role in kind of keeping the eye on the ball in terms of these important issues.
So Charles, how does this work when the understanding is you enter the hospital, you have no family or friends to be there. Who's advocating for you under those circumstances?
Well, there's various groups that are lobbying, and they've been addressing these issues as well with the Department of Health and Human Services. There are various rights groups for the disabled, and we sent them a copy of our memo, and they got in touch with us, so we've been communicating with them and coordinating our efforts to make sure the rights of the disabled are protected. And I also sent our memo to the people at ARP, the Association for Retired People. So there's various organizations who have ostensibly, looked out for the rights of the elderly and disabled, who are presumably weighing in on this. I haven't heard from Marr, but we did hear from, again, the Association for Disabled People, and they are taking an active role and are concerned about these issues. But, Roger Severino, who was appointed by President Trump to head the Office of Civil Rights for Department of Health and Human Services, which is a big deal position, particularly right now, because they're at the tip of the spear in making sure that whatever protocols are followed or compliance with the law. Well, Roger is a practicing Catholic, and he's very sensitive to these issues. And I've worked with him before, including on the marriage issues, when those are in the forefront. So he's assembled a good team of people who are looking at this very seriously and working hard, pretty much around the clock, they said, making sure that the federal law, which protects people based upon age and discrimination, are being followed in these circumstances, specifically with the issue of rationing. And like I said, they issued their own bulletin on March 28th, which addresses these issues, and they asked us to weigh in on 6 important questions they've asked other groups, including the stuff we've talked about. To what extent do you look at advanced age and comorbidities? Do you look at life expectancy? Does a child automatically get preference over like a 90-year-old? Those types, and then the first responders, get priority. And the tough question is, can you take somebody off a respirator if they're not responding that well, so you can give it to someone else? That's really a tough issue. So they're looking at these issues and having various groups, including those that advocate for the elderly and the disabled, weigh in on it, so that, and he's approaching it, not just from a legal perspective, but from a moral and ethical perspective, which I'm sure is informed by his Catholic faith. So that's all very reassuring.
I noticed your memorandum was written on March 23rd. You sent it to the government, and they issue rules on the basis of it March 28th. So that was kind of quick action on their part.
Yeah, no, and to be honest about it, I'm sure they were working on it. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure they were too.
I mean,
yeah.
they did read it, and they set up a meeting with us after they had issued theirs and asked us to look into these follow-up questions, and they're asking other groups to do that as well. But yeah, it was good to know that they had read it, and not surprisingly, their conclusions were completely consistent with ours. We went into a little bit more detail because we were doing a full-blown legal analysis to be addressed to people who had legal training, such as him and his team. But his was addressed more to medical professionals. But we came to the same conclusions, obviously, because the law is what it is. You can't discriminate on the basis of age or disability.
Just a little side question, and you mentioned assisted suicide a few minutes ago. Right now, I guess all of the deaths that are occurring where the coronavirus is part of the person's health profile, they're listing it as the virus as the cause of death. Do you see any problems with that as far as statistical analysis later in making determinations on triage for patients the next time we have an epidemic of this because of that automatic listing that this person died from the virus?
That's something I haven't given a lot of thought to, and I don't really feel I'm necessarily the best qualified person to answer it, because I'm not really sure how that would play out, the fact that they're listing it as a coronavirus, next time if they're going to be giving that undue weight in light of other comorbid factors,
right.
Because, as you know, most everybody who has died from it has some type of other issue, diabetes or some type of immunodeficiency, which has made them more vulnerable. Interestingly, not in every case. So there's still unknowns about this. Even some young people with no known predisposing factors have gotten very sick. In a couple of cases, they've died. But in most every case, there has been some comorbid issues. And, I don't think there's any question in most cases that coronavirus played certainly a causative role. Was it the predominant factor? The impression I have is, well, the people likely would not have died at that time without the coronavirus. They weren't in the hospital, presumably, before they got it. So it was certainly what we would call in the law a substantial factor. But it seems to me, for purposes of medical assessment and statistical accuracy, you'd want to list the comorbid factors. Just like when you see on these death certificates, they'll usually have 3 or 4 causes of death. They'll have the primary cause, and then they'll have secondary causes. So I think that would be more accurate and diagnostic and a better resource for dealing with future cases. If that's your question, yeah, that makes sense, because that's what normally happens when they list a cause of death, at least on the death certificates. In my practice, I've seen those periodically, and that's how they handle it.
Well, that's very interesting and enlightening. I want to thank you, Charles, for joining us today. We're pretty much out of time, but we appreciate your participating in the program. And the memo that you wrote, I have a copy of it, and it was a very interesting memo and very well documented. And so I would refer this to anybody who may have somebody in the hospital who is under a health watch, so that they know what their rights are. I certainly appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
Glad to be with you. Thank you for having me, both Mike and Gina. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Attorney Charles LiMandri from the Freedom of Conscience Defense Foundation. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we will be back in 3 minutes.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports 365 is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic with 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling Catholic graduate, and Dr. Todd Pedig. The Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, online at ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Doing what is challenging because it's right. That's Blackbird Investments. In 2013, Blackbird Investments was born from the inspiration of St. Kevin. When it comes to building real estate, they look for creative solutions by forming strategic alliances, creating energy-efficient buildings, and engaging with local craftsmen. At its core, Blackbird Investments believes in giving buildings a new life. BlackbirdInvest.com. Blackbird Investments, doing what is challenging because it's right.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. Information about Pharmatan and other products at ImogeneIngredients.com. Paul and Paul are members of St. Augustine's Knights of Columbus and encourage their brother knights to keep standing for their faith.
Thank you, Skeffington's Formal Wear, for sponsoring Dowling Catholic High School football. In business since 1951, Skeffington's Formal Wear offers quality service, style, and selection, providing tuxedos, suits, and casual groom attire for weddings, proms, and any other special occasion. Skeffington's Formal Wear, with convenient locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Davenport, Coralville, and Ankeny. All locations are family-owned and operated by members in their respective communities, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio in Des Moines. And Gina, I think after this program, I'm going to have to go out and get a new headset for my Skype thing. I seem to be cutting in and out a little bit in what I can hear.
I'm not sure. Is that an essential business? Will they have those stores open?
I don't know. Probably not. I'll probably have to order it online someplace and wait 3 weeks to get it.
Well, phenomenal guests today. I really enjoyed both of their analysis on these policy changes or the review in the case of the medical rights by the Thomas More Society.
Yeah, that was very good. And the last question I asked him about whether or not we should always list the coronavirus as the cause of death and the people who die. I think if you remember last week or the week before, we had Alex Schottenberg from the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition on, and we were talking there about how in the states that allow this physician-assisted suicide, the cause of death on death certificates always has to list the underlying disease the person has, the underlying illness, diabetes or heart disease or whatever, and not suicide. And if you remember, Alex was talking about how that skews the statistics so that when somebody is diagnosed with something and they tell them, well, you've got 3 years approximately, before it is fatal, now by listing the cause of death of somebody as that underlying cause rather than suicide, the statistics will skew in a shorter time frame for the person. In other words, they will be told maybe that now the average lifespan with this disease is only a year instead of 3 years or 6 months or whatever, which may encourage more people to actually engage in physician-assisted suicide. So I was wondering if maybe the listing of the coronavirus as the cause of death in all of these cases might not skew future statistics so that future doctors and medical practitioners will not have true statistics when they're looking at somebody's rate of morbidity.
Exactly. In fact, we had that conversation this morning at breakfast about how this pandemic has created so much data. This what we call the tiny invisible enemy has created so much medical data and policy data that we will be studying the results and the outcomes for years, both on a medical level and a policy level.
Yeah, I think you're right. And of course, it takes up the news. It's kind of funny. We have a presidential election going on, and we don't hear much about it. All we hear is about the pandemic. And I think it's nice for people to get out once in a while and get away from that, or to turn on one of these cable stations if they want to watch TV and watch an old sitcom or something, just to kind of get away from that, because you're just inundated with this almost 24 hours a day. Every time you turn on the TV or pick up a newspaper or something, that's what you see.
Very interesting stuff. Yes, very interesting.
Yeah, so I take it you're having your groceries delivered.
I am. In fact, I got up at 3 a.m. to schedule my Sam's pickup, because unless you do it at that hour, you can't get a slot.
Yeah.
So it's a whole new way of life. You've got to plan way far out in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Father Jim Livingston last night, and he was telling me about how they call over to, I guess it's Hy-Vee, and they go over to pick it up, and the person comes out and puts it in the trunk, and they don't mingle or anything. They just kind of very impersonal, but that's what we have to do. I hope we can get out of this. I really miss the weekends and Sunday and being at the altar when Mass is being offered. But anymore, I'm starting to lose track of the days, because that break on Saturday and Sunday isn't there anymore. It all kind of runs together.
I feel the same. Yeah, I'm not on the altar, but being in communion with everyone else at the church is a huge loss for me.
Yeah, that's a big part of the faith. That's a big part of the faith. Well, I guess we've probably kind of at the end of things here, so let's do our final prayer and then sign off, because I think, as I'm looking at the clock here, we're pretty much to the end of our time, Gina.
Yes.
So let's pray. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
Amen.
I think we had a good program today. My cat didn't get in and jump on my lap while we were doing this, so I guess that's a plus, too.
No distractions there.
No distractions. All right, for Gina, Noel, and myself, thank you for listening. Join us next week for another edition of Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial, Thursdays at 10 a.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.